Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to not take our older episodes offline once we publish the newer one.
Well, yeah, when it's up to us, I guess. I just realized there's a bulk of our work that is offline, but that's not because of us. It's thanks to mergers, acquisitions, and firings and layoffs anyway. That's a bit of an aside. We're here to talk about the video games we can no longer play.
Yeah, that's right. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot keeps stepping in it. Faced a couple of very direct and very internet questions about the company's operations during a shareholder meeting on July 10th. Lawrence, what did he say?
Oh, I love this stuff. I love it whenever internet controversies spill over into the real world, because once it's in front of a group of money men, it kind of seems a little silly. Anyway, quote, woke or not woke, end quote. The shareholder directly asked, referring to Ubisoft's bold choice of having an African samurai lead a game set in feudal Japan.
The same shareholder also asked about the growing Stop Killing Games movement. So this is your internet champion here, guys, giving Guillemot an opportunity to address the topic directly. And shout out to Steven Totillo at GameFile for spotting these interactions and clipping out the official English translation of the exchange. Nice job, Totillo.
Yeah, really appreciate that. And while we said that Guillemot would address the topic directly, this is an investor call and he is an executive, so we get our usual amount of execu speak. Just want to prepare you for that. Accordingly, Guillemot provided a diplomatic non-answer to the woke accusation or question, explaining that they were looking for historical characters with heroic journeys. And I could see how Yasuke fit that, and that's kind of where Guillemot let the topic lie.
Yeah, the woke or not one, that one just stopped right there. But then, Guillemot's response to Stop Killing Games, a little more substantial.
Yeah, first speaking just in general, Guillemot did say that Ubisoft does provide information and forewarning to players about when their games will be discontinued.
The implication is that consumers are not surprised and have the information to decide for themselves if a game is worth it.
Yeah, and also to, I guess, make arrangements if a game that they enjoy is about to be discontinued. He then described the specific moves that Ubisoft made regarding the crew to ameliorate the game's discontinuation.
Yeah, that's right. Ubisoft discounted the Crew 2 to €1 for owners of the Crew 1 because they were shutting down the Crew 1. And then they also announced that the Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest would eventually have an offline mode.
Well, that's kind of what the Stop Killing Games movement is asking for. I guess it wasn't legally required, but that's kind of nice. He also pointed out that the issue of service games having an end of life is not something that's exclusive to Ubisoft.
Yeah, it's true. He said this kind of issue is not specific to Ubisoft. All video game publishers are faced with that issue. You provide a service, but nothing is written in stone, and at some point the service may be discontinued. Nothing is eternal. He goes on to say more conclusively, support for old games cannot last forever.
Well, Doom is eternal, first of all, but he is correct, yeah. Realistically speaking, a private company really can't be required to support a product forever, especially if it's not profitable. But that's not really what Stop Killing Games is asking for. There's a bit of a back and forth there. Regardless, Guillemot concludes saying, quote, "This is a far-reaching issue and we're working on it." So another diplomatic, hey, we did some stuff, I'm not obligating to anything, we're the good guys here, we're all working on it together, kind of, it's execu speak.
It is. I wonder if they really are working on it. A few other scant bits of info tumbled out of the investor meeting, like mention of a new unannounced Ghost Recon game. Yay, that's fun. And further lamentation at Star Wars Outlaws' underperformance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of bummed about that, because I liked and still like Outlaws. Even though I haven't played the DLC yet, I gotta get on that. Guillemot again noted that Outlaws may have been affected by the Star Wars brand being in, quote, a bit of choppy waters.
Boy, I disagree with that almost entirely. Ubisoft's brand, I think, is more tainted than Star Wars, unfortunately.
That's true. Stop Killing Games organizer Ross Scott provided a rebuttal to these statements to Sports Illustrated when asked for comment. This is a bit of a long one.
Ross Scott said the Stop Killing Games movement has never once asked for endless support from any publisher. We are asking that when publishers shut down their games, they do so in a responsible way so it's not deliberately disabled for all existing customers. The practice of video games being effectively destroyed is entirely preventable when planned for from the beginning, including ones designed to connect to the publisher while they are being supported. It's only negligence that this happens at all.
Yeah, this is very strong wording, but you know, he's got to reinforce the position of his agenda here. I don't know, I'm going to be honest, after this exchange, I really didn't remember or even know about, I think in the first place, the €1 upgrade, plus the announcements to make the Crew 2 playable offline and Motorfest. Isn't that exactly what this movement is asking for, right? Games being made playable offline, warning when services are about to shut down. according even to Stop Killing Games' own bullet points, the only game that lands outside of it is The Crew 1, now that it is shut down and there is no offline mode. Do 1.4 million people really want to play The Crew 1? I mean, the answer is obviously no. And this whole movement is more about the idea of it than the reality of it, I think. And that's why all the verbiage gets pushed to extremes when talking about how villainous these game corporations are for killing our games. But it's still weird that it's plural, given that it's really only about one that nobody played enough in the first place to even keep alive. So I don't want to sound like it's not a cause worth supporting, because it is, but it almost feels like you're worried that, I don't know, that bears are going to start falling out of the sky. So we have to start a Stop Falling Bears movement, because wouldn't it be terrible if you're on your way to work and a bear falls on you? And maybe one bear did fall on one guy over there, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems like the verbiage around the movement is so excited for a problem that really isn't that widespread. I guess the argument is that it could become so, but I think it would have been already if it were going to, given all the furor around service games. So I don't know. The more that this goes on, the more bizarre, I guess, the emotional factor of it becomes to me.
So, Lawrence, I don't disagree with anything you said. All that stuff is going to make people so upset in the comments. Let me tell you, number one. And so here's what I'm going to attempt to explain, because I think you're right. I think it is an emotional response. I actually genuinely think, number one, I do obviously support the Stop Killing Games movement. I don't want any video game to go away ever. They do. It's unfortunate, but they do. And it happens with cars. It happens with everything you buy, any technology you buy, your phone, whatever. But I don't want them to go away. So I very much appreciate the petition, and I hope that the EU turns it into law and starts finding companies love it. But I really do think that all of these petitions in general we're fed up with corporations emotionally. And I think that, so for me personally, anything that fights against a corporation, doesn't matter which corporation it is great. And I want all of us to succeed all the time. And I am, I guess, happy for the internet to feel like they're getting behind something that hopefully will change something. That said, though, what Lawrence said is correct. I mean, Ubisoft, it sounds like they're trying to correct course a little bit, and already started to anyways. So if Ubisoft doesn't do that, if they then go backwards and say, all right, well, never mind, we're going to get rid of every video game, then I get it. Like, let's start being mad at Ubisoft again. Ubisoft, like I said earlier in the episode, is always the focus of hate. People hate the brand Ubisoft, and they hate it. Like, it is an abnormal amount of hate for Ubisoft. And yes, they are shitty. There's a lot of stuff that they've done that's really shitty. But also at the same time, like we've been preaching, Star Wars Outlaws, Assassin's Creed Shadows, both pretty good video games. One of them made by Massive Entertainment, published by Ubisoft. One of them made by Ubisoft. So it's like, these are nuanced conversations that we should have about Ubisoft and other companies that are getting rid of games like EA, things like that. So I really do understand, and I want every video game to be playable forever. It's not going to be the case, but I will say that I hope that this does change things. I hope that there is the law that comes into effect because of this petition.
Yeah, and I should acknowledge as well that given the timeline of things, and when Ubisoft announced the upgrade promotion and the fact that Crew Motorfest and Crew 2 would be playable offline, I'm pretty sure those happened after Stop Killing Games started. So it's possible that because of the petition, Ubisoft made these moves, or it landed more on the plate of producers and stuff who budget resources and plan functionality. It reminds me a lot of all the discourse around accessibility. Games are far more accessible now than they were 10 years ago. And that luckily no laws necessarily had to be passed. It was because of increased awareness and discussion, and always the vague threat of a good internet dogpile, I think, that makes companies hedge their bets a little bit and make sure that we're not the one that everyone gets mad at this time around. So if producers are in a room talking about all the ways they can avoid being, dogpiled on the internet, including accessibility options as one, and hey, maybe we need to start talking about having an offline mode because people are getting pissed about this thing too. So yes, there is value just in the fervor, and the value can only push things towards the consumer side of the spectrum, versus, you know, corporations that make billions. So yeah, if we can break off any of that, any of that profit into something we all benefit from, that's a win-win. There's no loser in that organization. But I'm gonna butt myself again. There's a confluence of events that kind of set me down an interesting rabbit hole. So I was watching the English translation of this Ubisoft exchange. YouTube decided to slide in with an autoplay. It played the Tribes 2 soundtrack for me, which thank you, YouTube. Love that soundtrack. But it also reminded me that in one of the many videos talking about the Stop Killing Games movement, Ross Scott name-dropped Tribes, Star Siege Tribes and Tribes 2, which are games that I played a shitload of back in the day. And he talked about how these games can still be playable, like peer-to-peer servers still work and people still play them. But I was curious how many people. So I dug around in some forum posts. There were some like community nights for Tribes 2, things like that. What I could find is that, there at any given time, there's servers that have maybe 10 to 20 people on them. And that's basically the population of active Tribes 2 players. So it's kind of humbling to think that as many, if not more, developers might need to be put on, converting a game into offline or planning an offline mode or coming up with some kind of peer-to-peer server client architecture. Like, it may take more than 20 people, 20 developers to make that, only for, 10 years down the road, 20 people to still be playing it. But it is still video game history that's still there. If I want to, and I don't necessarily want to, but if I want to, I could. Sometimes it feels like people, they'll buy a Raspberry Pi and they'll load it up with 1 million emulated games, and then they'll boot it up and show people, look at all these games I can play. And they're like, okay, play one. I don't feel like it. And they just turn it off. So sometimes, I don't know, Stop Killing Games feels a bit like that. But there's no downside there. The only downside is that there is more history. There's more games that more people can go back to and explore if they want. So I don't know. Inside of me, there are two wolves. One is thinking very managerially about this, about the money versus the benefit reaped. But I need to throw that away for the other wolf, who's just like, more video games is good.
The way I see it too, in terms of the money. Let's say I'm managing a company like Ubisoft. I'm EVGameO, and Ubisoft is losing money. They're currently on the downswing and not doing well as a corporation, it turns out. So even their brand is in the shitter, and also they aren't making any money. So if I'm EVGameO, the first thing I say to Stop Killing Games is, you bet. Every game from now on gets an offline mode, because what happens is then that gets back a little bit of goodwill from the audience, and then the audience maybe goes like, all right, well, maybe I'll buy the next Ubisoft game because EVGameO said I'm going to give this an offline mode. That's what I would do if I was running a corporation that was in the shitter in terms of brand and money. So it's weird to me that EVGameO keeps coming out and saying dumb bullshit. And also, just recently there was another headline where he was saying something about how microtransactions make single player games more fun or some dumb. I was like, what the? Shut up. Like, shut up. Stop it. Stop saying dumb, stupid shit like that. Instead, if somebody asks you about microtransactions, being like, yeah, you know what, we're going to try and not put it in a single player game. Like, just listen to, he's clearly being stubborn. Like, it's clearly Ubisoft being very, very stubborn. And I think Stop Killing Games is hopefully going to beat the stubbornness out of Ubisoft and other companies, like you mentioned with accessibility. Accessibility is a great analogy because it took years for that to sort of start coming into games, but the more that we talk about it and the more that we, advocate for it, the more we'll get it.
He's the CEO of what used to be a very successful company. I'm gonna guess his mind is somewhere where, one of my wolves is, which is that he sees the numbers, and the numbers so far have indicated to him that no one gives a shit about DLC and no one gives a shit about offline modes, because they were buying Ubisoft games in droves, and I'm sure all their survey data and stuff said that these issues just don't matter. Or the way that people spend money indicate they don't care. So he might be coming at it from that perspective, especially if he's talking to investors, of like, these issues are so microscopic compared to the amounts of money we traffic in. But that's what makes games so interesting, is that the core users have a remarkable ability to craft narrative, and especially like paint image. So they can create create a narrative makes it sound like it's fictional, and I don't mean that, but there is a bit of storytelling that goes on, especially when it comes to the related personalities of game companies. So if the narrative gets set that Ubisoft is a shit company that wants to steal your money, and that's just the line that gets repeated up to the mass market, now you got a problem. So yeah, I think a little image curation could help them a lot. I was hoping that some of that would come from games like Star Wars Outlaws or Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, games that, you know, were tight, well-developed, kind of vibrant video games. But that narrative is pretty hard to push back on. Pretty hard to unseat, especially when they're the stinky kid in class. So I don't know where they go from here, but yeah, using these opportunities to seed talking points that appeal to the core instead of the investors in the room he's talking to, I think that would be a good first step.
And not to belabor this point, but Lawrence and I, we worked at Machinima when this was happening. Machinima's brand was in the shitter. Everybody hated Machinima. They hated seeing the brand. They hated the logo. And we were making content at Machinima that people really liked. And we were some of the only people that were making original content at Machinima that people really liked. But we had to constantly fight against this terrible brand of Machinima. And that's inevitably why we left. But I will say it was so hard. And we begged the executives at Machinima to understand that their brand was in the shitter and that they needed to either change the brand entirely, stop pushing it in front of people, you know, do a little, like you said, brand curation, make people a little more, feel a little more positive about watching a Machinima video. And they never did it. And hey, look where Machinima is now. Yeah,
Ubisoft kind of playing the same game. They did a splinter off company, tried to take their most valuable properties with them. A bit of a reboot, a Machinima Prime, if you will. We'll see if that works out for them.
Yeah.
But we would like to thank we'd like to thank you, first of all, for watching this episode. It's only because of your choice to watch this that we get to do it, so we're very appreciative of that. Some viewers decide to take it to the next level and support us directly. We'd like to shout a couple of them out right now. 2 patrons, very special patrons that play Tribes 2 every night. So they're very grateful that that game was not killed, was stop killed. DJ Kento and Wee Bish Jazbot. I think that's VGH on the quick voice command chart. That's a good one.